April 1906, San Francisco was the Paris of the West, a crown jewel of the Pacific. It was a city of nearly 500,000 people, a hub of culture, wealth, and unbridled ambition. From the opera houses of Nob Hill to the bustling wharves, it felt indestructible. Its port was the gateway to the Orient, bringing silks, spices, and tea to the American heartland. But at 5:12 a.m. on April 18th, that sense of permanence was about to be obliterated. The earth didn't just shake, it roared. A 290-mile segment of the San Andreas Fault ruptured. The main shock lasted nearly a minute, an eternity when the ground beneath you is liquefied. It was a strike-slip rupture. The Pacific plate surged northward by as much as 21 feet in seconds. Icons were humbled. The brand-new City Hall, meant to last centuries, was reduced to a skeleton. As the shaking stopped, a deathly silence fell over a city buried in its own white dust. Survivors stood in the streets in their nightgowns, dazed, staring at a world they no longer recognized. The death toll was immediate. Thousands were trapped. But the nightmare was only in its first act. The great tenor Enrico Caruso was at the Palace Hotel. He fled into the street, vowing never to return. He reportedly said, "Give me Vesuvius, but not San Francisco." He never sang in the city again. Within minutes, over 50 fires had started. Broken chimneys and severed gas mains were the fuel. The earthquake had done what no army could. It had severed the city's water supply. The hydrants were dry. In the Hayes Valley, a single woman tried to cook breakfast on a damaged stove, igniting a district. These smaller blazes merged into a firestorm so hot it melted glass and twisted steel beams. Tragedy struck the leadership too. Fire Chief Dennis Sullivan was fatally injured in his bed by a falling chimney. Without water, the army turned to dynamite. They hoped to create fire breaks by blowing up city blocks. But the unskilled use of explosives often just showered unburned neighborhoods with flaming debris. The Navy arrived within hours. Ships like the USS Chicago and Preble began a massive waterfront rescue. They pumped seawater through thousands of feet of hose, saving the waterfront from total destruction. By the afternoon of the 18th, Market Street was a river of humanity flowing toward the ferry building. People dragged their most prized possessions, pianos, trunks, family heirlooms, until their hands bled. Chinatown was decimated. Its residents faced not only the fire, but also intense discrimination in the aftermath. While the fire roared through its narrow alleys, city officials initially resisted efforts to rebuild the district. But the community fought back, asserting their right to stay and rebuild their iconic neighborhood. In just 3 days, 250,000 people, half the population, were made homeless. San Francisco was a void. The legendary Palace Hotel, thought to be fireproof, became a hollow shell as the inferno swept through. Nob Hill's mansions, the homes of the railroad kings, were consumed in a spectacular display of fire. The fire was visible from 100 miles away. For survivors across the bay, it looked like the end of the world. Ferries and small boats worked round the clock, transporting thousands to safety in Oakland and Marin. General Frederick Funston declared martial law. Soldiers were given shoot-to-kill orders for any looters. Law and order became absolute. In the ruins, the distinction between a looter and a survivor was thin. Finally, on the morning of the 21st, the wind shifted and the rain came. The fires were spent. 4 square miles of the city's heart were gone. 490 city blocks had been erased. The statistics are staggering: $500 million in property damage, roughly $15 billion today. Life for the survivors moved into the parks. 20,000 people lived in earthquake shacks and tents. The earthquake shacks were small green wooden cabins built to house refugees. They were the city's first public housing. Social barriers collapsed. Millionaires and laborers stood side by side in communal kitchens. Food was rationed. The bread lines became the pulse of the surviving city. San Francisco had turned into hell. But from these ashes, a new city would rise. Join us for Part 2, The Rebirth. The fires were finally out, but for the survivors, the real battle was just beginning. San Francisco was a city of ghosts. The immediate priority was relief. Aid was pouring in from every corner of the globe, but the scale of the need was unprecedented. The Red Cross, still in its infancy, proved its worth, coordinating a massive relief operation. The cleanup was a monumental task. 6.5 billion bricks had to be moved and cleaned. Instead of just being hauled away, the ruins were salvaged. The old city would literally build the new one. Amidst the chaos, a local banker named A.P. Giannini performed a miracle. He had rescued his gold just before the fire hit his vault. While other banks' vaults were still too hot to open, Giannini was lending money on the docks. Within weeks, a new city began to emerge. The sound of hammers replaced the crackle of flames. But as the city rebuilt, a dark side emerged. Mayor Eugene Schmitz and political boss Abe Roof were caught in a massive graft scandal. Money meant for relief was siphoned off into the pockets of corrupt officials. The grafters' trials gripped the nation. The disaster sparked a powerful reform movement. The people of San Francisco demanded a city built on honesty, not just brick. The earthquake didn't just change the city, it changed the state. San Francisco's dominance began to slip south. While San Francisco was digging out, Los Angeles was booming. The disaster gave the southern rival the chance to catch up. Banks and businesses looked south for stability. The earthquake had fundamentally altered California's economic map. In just 3 days, 250,000 people, half the population, were made homeless. San Francisco was a void. Architects like Daniel Burnham wanted a city of grand boulevards and European parks. By 1908, the heart of the city was beating again. A more modern, safer San Francisco was born. New laws required fireproof materials. The era of the wooden city was over. San Francisco invited the world to see its rebirth. It was a miracle achieved in just 9 years. The ultimate triumph came in 1915 with the Panama Pacific International Exposition. Over 18 million people attended, confirming that San Francisco was once again a world-class city. But the 1906 quake also birthed a new science. For the first time, researchers began to study the fault itself. The disaster gave birth to the modern science of seismology. We began to understand the fault. It mapped the fault for the first time, identifying the threat that still looms today. The 1908 Lawson Report was the most comprehensive earthquake study ever conducted at the time. Today, a network of sensors monitors the fault 24 hours a day, providing life-saving warnings. But the legacy of 1906 is built into the very DNA of the modern city. San Francisco has become a global center of innovation built on the bones of a fallen city. The character of San Francisco, its resilience, its refusal to quit, was forged in the fires of 1906. If you look closely at the city today, the ghosts of the Great Fire are still there, in the bricks. It is a city that has mastered the art of survival, a city that turned into hell only to rebuild itself. Thank you for joining us for this reconstruction of a tragedy that became a triumph. The earth may shake, but the human spirit remains unshakable. San Francisco, the city that wouldn't die,